The napkin was still on the table when the bridge started to hum, not a sound anyone would notice at first. A low vibration under the traffic noise, the kind of thing a person only catches if they've spent 40 years listening to steel for exactly this reason. By the time the young engineer at the site trailer heard it and understood, the old man on the bench 200 feet away had already known for 6 minutes. His name was Walter Price. He was 78, and for the past year the city had known him only as the man who slept in the third bench from the north end of Ridgeline Park, a folded army blanket beside him, a thermos of black coffee refilled each morning at the shelter, and a way of watching the Ridgeline pedestrian bridge that no one had ever thought to question. What happened in the 90 minutes that followed would save 11 lives and end. Quietly, one of the greatest injustices a good man had ever swallowed in silence. Walter had not always been invisible. 41 years ago, he had been lead structural engineer on the original Ridgeline Bridge. A 29-year-old prodigy handed a commission most engineers waited a career to earn. He designed the cable tensioning system himself, argued 18 months against a contractor pushing cheaper steel, and won. The bridge had stood for 4 decades because Walter Price refused, at every turn, to shave a margin of safety off his math. Then his wife died of an aneurysm at 44, sudden and without warning, on a Tuesday morning while making coffee. Walter had been at a job site 3 states away. He had not been in the room. That single fact detonated something in him that no engineering degree had prepared him to calculate. He stopped sleeping. He made an error on a retaining wall project 8 months later, caught before construction, but real, and the firm that once called him a prodigy quietly let him go, citing his health. His savings went to his daughter's tuition, and his own unraveling in roughly equal measure. By the time he understood what had happened to his life, he was 60, unemployable in an industry that trusted resumes over resilience, and alone. He ended up in Ridgeline Park 11 years later, sleeping on the bench nearest the bridge he had once built, because some part of him had never really left it. The city had commissioned a renovation that spring, a widening project for a new transit line, led by a rising firm called Callaway Structural. Its lead engineer on site was 29, the exact age Walter had been when he built the bridge, though neither of them knew it yet. Her name was Priya Anand, brilliant, ambitious, utterly convinced the plans on her tablet contained everything worth knowing about the bridge beneath her feet. Walter had been watching the renovation for 3 weeks, and something about the new load calculations bothered him. The added transit weight, the modified cable angle, a lighter alloy substituted in the secondary support beams. None of it individually looked wrong. Together in this bridge's specific geometry, it looked like a countdown. He sketched it on a napkin from the shelter breakfast line. A diagram of stress redistribution across the cable network, an arrow at the northeast support column, and 6 words underlined twice. Check the northeast column load. He carried it to the site trailer on a Thursday morning and asked politely to speak to whoever was in charge. Priya came out holding an unfinished coffee, glanced at the folded blanket visible over his shoulder, and made the calculation people like her made in about 1.5 seconds. "I really don't have time this morning," she said. "There's a donation box for the shelter at the community center on 5th. "I'm not asking for money," Walter said. "I need 5 minutes. It's about the northeast column." "Sir, this is an active engineering site. I can't have you—" "I know it's an active site," Walter said, and something in his voice made 2 crew members glance up. "I built the original one." Priya almost laughed, not cruelly, but with the disbelief of someone whose 6-year degree was being lectured by a man with a shelter blanket about a structure she'd studied in graduate coursework. "Okay," she said, in the tone people use when a conversation is already over. "Thank you for your interest." "I have a meeting." She walked back inside. Walter stood in the gravel lot a long moment, napkin still folded in his coat pocket, then did the only thing that ever made sense when people stopped listening. He went back to his bench and kept watching the bridge. "Before we continue, if you believe that expertise has no address and wisdom wears no uniform, please like this video, subscribe to Kindness Tales, and share this with someone who needs to believe in people again today. 3 days later, during a scheduled load test with a transit vehicle crossing at full weight, the northeast support column began to hum. Walter heard it before the sensors did, because he'd been listening to that column for 3 weeks. He was on his feet and moving before he'd finished the thought, crossing the grass at a pace no one who knew him as the man on the bench had ever seen. Inside the trailer, an alarm was sounding. A threshold crossed, not yet an emergency, but close. Priya stared at a monitor, her expression sliding from confusion into fear. 11 workers and inspectors were currently on the bridge deck. "It's the northeast column," Walter said, pushing through the door. The alloy substitution changed the harmonic threshold. "Under this load, it's going to resonate before your sensors finish confirming it. Evacuate that deck now, not after confirmation." "I don't even know how you—" Priya started. "You have maybe 90 seconds, Walter said. "Evacuate. Then look at my napkin." Something about that number, 90 seconds, not hurry, not soon, cut through 6 years of training faster than any credential could. Priya hit the evacuation alarm. The 11 workers funneled toward the north access point in the controlled panic of people who had drilled this scenario and never expected to need it. The column's hum deepened into a groan 3 people later described as the bridge clearing its throat. The last worker cleared the deck at 84 seconds. The column didn't collapse. It buckled, a visible 6-inch lateral shift that would have been catastrophic under full load, but on an empty deck became something the structural team could contain and repair, rather than something that made the evening news as a tragedy. Priya stood in the trailer, afterward with Walter's napkin shaking in her hands, staring at a diagram that matched almost line for line what the emergency analysis would confirm over the next 3 days. "Who are you?" she said. It wasn't really a question anymore. "Walter Price," he said. "Lead engineer on the original build. 41 years ago," she looked him up that night. 11 minutes to find the archived records, another 20 sitting at her kitchen table with her head in her hands, understanding what the insurance carrier would later put in blunt writing. A warning from the bridge's original designer, delivered 3 days early, dismissed at the door. What Priya did next mattered more than the apology, though the apology came too, in person at the same bench 2 days later. She brought the napkin to Callaway's founding partner and insisted, against real resistance, that Walter be formally retained as a consulting engineer for the rest of the renovation. Not a gesture, a necessity. His knowledge of the original structure's tolerances, undocumented anywhere in the firm's archives, was the only reason the repair plan came together, in weeks instead of months. Walter returned to a job site for the first time in 18 years wearing a borrowed hard hat and a consulting badge, with his name spelled correctly, which he noted quietly, mattered more than he expected. The City Housing Authority, informed by Callaway's own statement crediting an unhoused former structural engineer with preventing catastrophic failure, offered Walter a caseworker and eventually a permanent apartment 2 blocks from the park. He kept the bench anyway, most mornings, coffee in hand, watching his bridge the way he always had. Except now, Priya stopped to sit with him for 10 minutes before work and eventually stopped needing a reason to. She asked him once, months later, why he'd never simply told the crew who he was that first Thursday. "I did tell you," Walter said. "You just didn't have a place in your head yet for a man on a bench who built bridges." The Ridgeline pedestrian bridge reopened that autumn with a small brass plaque near the north entrance, added at Priya's insistence, bearing 2 names instead of 1. The firm that renovated it, and the man who built it first, 41 years earlier, when he was exactly as young and certain as she had been the morning she almost didn't listen. If this story moved you, please like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to Kindness Tales for more stories of courage, grace, and the small human moments that change everything. And tell us in the comments, has someone's outward circumstances ever made you underestimate what they truly knew?